Hey folks, Evil DM here, and welcome back to TheEvilDM's Sage Advice. So first things first, welcome back if you're a returning person viewing my videos. Thank you very much. Don't forget to hit like and comment below in this video. And if you haven't, please share the videos and tell your friends about it. And let's get some more people involved in comments and likes and shares everywhere because, advice is what it is. It's advice, and sometimes someone could use some advice every once in a while when they're playing a game because they're stuck somewhere. Maybe something I say triggers something for them to continue along. Not saying I'm a genius or an expert at this game. I have been playing a while. Maybe something I say would be like, oh, to this person, and he'll go, awesome, and he'll like it and he'll thank you for it. But speaking along those lines, let's talk a little bit about how people are hung up on rules, because a lot of people on the net are just hung up on rules. Rules, rules, rules. Nothing. If it's not in the book, it's not possible. I see tons of really simple questions to the developers on Twitter and on Facebook. Can I do this? Can I do that? And it just seems like, yeah, why not? It's your game. You can do it. My answer is simply just always, yeah, sure. Let's sit down and hash it out. I mean, if a player comes to me and says, hey, Vince, I want to be a one-eyed purple people eater, one-eyed, one-horned purple people eater, I would say, all right, well, how would that fit into my campaign? And then they would tell me, Vince, I think this is a great race to play, and it'd be like one of those rare things, and he comes from the cave mountains, and he's evolved, and he gives me this whole backstory, and he tells me how there's evolved from this purple flying monster thing that wants to redeem itself, and it has a redeeming backstory of how it came to grow and move on and get along with society. I'd be like, whoa, that's amazing, let's sit down and write this out. It's chances are, yes, most DMs will be like, yeah, that's awesome, let's do it. And as a DM, you need to listen to your players and allow these things, not just be like, no, I can't do that because that's not in my game and my best interest. Yeah, I know, bad voice. But as a DM, you just need to make rulings. You need to make decisions. If you can't find it in the book, make it up. Find something similar to it, something close to it. Research on Google. There's tons and tons of blogs and websites out there that can give you resources and material and inspiration. There's tons of YouTube videos like this one. G-plug. And you could simply just watch them for hours and just write down ideas. Even if in one of my videos, or for example, the web DM, one of his videos, he talks about a mountainside. Hey, that mountainside village he talked about in his last episode, that could be a perfect place for that purple, one-eyed, one-horned people eater to come from. Maybe he came from that little village in the mountains that's hidden away, and he doesn't want to eat people anymore. He wants to, be part of society. So there's, something to do right there. Design it up. Who cares if it's not perfect? That's another thing people are hung up on. Writing things up and making sure it's utterly perfect so that everyone else will be accepting of it. Who cares? It's your game. You're going to share it. People are going to like it. They're not going to like it. Who cares? Just do it. Do whatever is fun for you and your friends in your game. Whatever makes sense to you at the time and makes sense to you. That's how we did it. When we did games back when we were kids, back in the 80s, there was no internet. It wasn't even heard of yet, pretty much. I mean, AOL, CompuServe, Prodigy, was that the late 80s? Showing my age here, right? Yeah, we had those things, but not everybody had that because, you had to use dial-up to get into those things, and you couldn't tie up your phone line for hours on end, so. But I'm going off on a tangent here. You need to make rulings. Oh, like I was saying, you share the stuff with your friends. Yeah. It's the same thing as sharing on social media, except with strangers, but we didn't share it to get approval. We just shared it to be like, hey, this is really cool. What do you think? I remember having tons of notebooks as a kid with just stupid drawings in it of monsters with swords or, heroes fighting this or that, or even what was the 80s? Big thing back then for me was G.I. Joe. We used to draw tons of, Cobra attacking here with G.I. Joe saving the day. Yo, Joe. And we'd have little role-playing games with G.I. Joe out of D&D rules because we thought it'd be fun. It didn't make any sense half the time, but it was fun. Make it up. Who cares? Now, let's get to another thing. that needs to be talked about, that's talked about quite a long time, and I've been doing this practically all my gaming life as a DM, called using the rule of cool. And the rule of cool really was undefined for the longest time because no one ever called the rule of cool. They just, make a ruling. That was the end of it. And then the rule of cooling came in existence, I think, during the 3E era, maybe towards the end of the 2E era. I'm not positive. But its definition means generally different things to different people. But if you ask people, you'll get the same general roundabout answer explanation about it. The rule of cool means giving your players the chance to perform ridiculous stunts or bend the rules a little bit in the sake of an awesome scene. Basically, it's telling you, does this sound cool? Will this break the game? No. Is this going to make the adventure fun for your friends and make them go huzzah and scream out loud and cheer and think you're awesome? Think they're awesome? Think their friends are awesome? Let it go. Who cares? Basically, to sum it up, it's just making a ruling. Rule of cool is make a ruling. Who cares? It's not in the book. A lot of older editions of D&D had this right in the books. I mean, just make a ruling. Can't find a rule? Oh, make a ruling. In AD&D 1E, when I started playing that way back in the day, and Basic, like I showed you in the previous news videos I have called The Roots of Evil, might want to check that out, where I unboxed a Basic set edition. There were not a lot of rules in there. Everything was very open-ended into interpretation of the group that's playing it. And that's how we play D&D. That's how you should be playing D&D. You should not be looking for a specific rule about everything. That's not how Gygax wanted this game to be played. Yeah, he was a war gamer originally, and he liked his rules, but he also liked the fact that things were up to the interpretation of the person running the game, allowing him to roll what he wanted to roll and making decisions because you are the adjudicator of the game. That's how it should have been played. There was a story that always, every time I think of this topic about you rule the game, not the other way around, and how the books are just guidelines and not a set stone tablet of rules, was when I did an interview way back a couple of years ago, probably approaching 5 now. I interviewed the author Tracy Hickman, who was responsible for the Dragonlance books and Dragonlance novels, and I should say the novels and the modules and the setting for second edition, later third, or whatever, blah, 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 and the Dragonlance Saga edition, blah, blah, blah. He was telling me a story of a perfect example of this situation coming up. He was on a plane coming back from, I think, a gaming convention. And he was sitting there just reading his book, jotting down notes, probably doing his daily thing for his next whatever Tracy was doing, because Tracy's always working. Guy's always busy. Amazing guy. Him and his wife always working. Laura, wow. He heard 2 kids, bickering back and forth. They were probably, late 20s, early teens, whatever. They were on the plane by themselves, so they were old enough to travel. Anyway, that's not the point. They were flipping through a book, and as you could see, it was a D&D book, and I think at the time it was the 3rd edition Dungeon Master's book and Player's Hand Guide. And they were flipping through the book, going back and forth. Well, I can't find this in the book, and they were talking about designing up a certain spell, and they're like, well, there's nothing in the book that says this, but we probably can't do that. And then, they couldn't find a rule on it, and they're like, well, I guess we really can't do that. And then the plane finally got landed, and they getting off the plane, and Tracy walked by them, and he said, he stopped to them, and he said, I overheard your guys' conversation. And they're like, yeah. And then they realized who he was, Tracy Hickman, and they're like, whoa, Tracy Hickman. And he's like, I just wanted to, just stop here for a moment and say, just because it's not in the book doesn't mean you can't do it. You're only limited by your imagination. And these guys were like, oh, wow, yeah, you're right. And that's the problem with a lot of people that come from video games into this genre of games, into role-playing games, is that they have the problem with, they're so used to this structure of straight narrow path of everything laid out for them, all the rules laid out for them, everything is straight and narrow. There is no way to do things on your own. They're just, this is how it's done, this is how you're going to do it. And then you come to D&D, they don't realize it. Here's the set of rules. Okay, this is what I need to go by. I have no other experience, which is fine because they really don't. And they're just not thinking outside the box. Who cares? It's the rules. Yeah, the rules are as written. Right. They're there to settle disputes. They're there to be the final say. Correct. But in certain situations, it's your game. What does it matter? Just make a ruling. Sometimes you have to be inventive on situations to get around certain rules to make the game fun, because it doesn't make sense half the time. So there was another thing that we always did when we were playing, and I got this from Gary Gygax himself when playing back in the RPGA days and the tournament days and seeing him at conventions, was so you're at it, you have to make a decision, but you're not sure what decision to make. So to be fair, we need to figure out an impartial way to do this. And that's just let the dice decide. So as a DM, you have the right to make a call whatever you want, but sometimes that call may lead to an argument or may lead to further questions, which obviously you don't interrupt the game for that. You always wait till after the game or a break, and then you chat it out with the DM and the player, or the player back and forth, and then you hash it out, and the DM will talk with you, and you come to a conclusion together and say, well, this blah 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 blah, that this blah blah blah, and you make your decision going forward. Like, this spell doesn't work, like this says, but going forward, we're gonna do this, or going back, we're gonna go do this, which most people like that. But back to the whole point, what we would do is Gary Gygax would make a decision and say, all right, well, so you want to pick that lock, and at the same time, you want to make sure that it doesn't make any noise. One of those big old clunky locks, and when you fiddle with it, it goes click, 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 click. So let's just say that that's probably not a good example, but let's just say there was no rule for that. So there was for them for picking locks, but it didn't cover not making noises for picking locks. So he would have the person pick the lock, and if they were successful, he would roll an extra die, like a d6, and say, okay, pick odd or even. And the player would pick odd, then roll the dice. If he gets an odd number, his feat was successful. If he gets the even number, he messes up and it doesn't work. Or, for example, like I did a lot of times, and I learned this from my former DM back in the day, the great Joe DM, as I like to call him, was take percentile dice, and the DM rolls it behind the screen, and he asks the player high or low. And the player would pick high, meaning 51% and over, or low, 50% and lower. Or you could do below 50 or above 50, if you want to be fair totally. And then 50% means tie, and usually tie goes to the player depending on how the DM does it. Sometimes tie goes to the house. I don't if you want to play by gambling rules, but you can do that. That's just a couple ways of doing it. I found that using percentiles too big of a spread and just rolling a d20 sometimes works, depending on what it is. Sometimes you just need to assign a difficulty class to it and say roll, but that's how it really works. So basically, how does this work? Have the player describe the situation to you. The DM, you or your friend, will decide based on the actions what rule or ruling will apply. If there's no rule or ruling will apply, you have to figure out what you're going to do. You're just going to allow it, or you're going to pick the dice method and let it be fairly done by dice, or just not allow it. You can say no, but you should always do, and why don't we try this? Always give a suggestion. If you're going to say no, give a suggestion to the player. Say, well, I don't think you could do that, but how about if you try doing this instead? And they'll go, more than likely the player will be like, you know what, that's probably a good idea too. Let's do that. I know with my group and previous groups, if I was just like, that's really not going to work, why don't you just try doing this? And using this skill, and then you can just easily roll and get. And they were usually just like, "Oh wow, that's a great idea, cool, fine." So once you decide that, the rolls are made, and then the DM describes the outcome of the event. Done. Sometimes you just don't need a roll, and it's just automatic, and you just wave your hand and just say, like in my previous 5e game before I started the one I'm doing right now. The players, one of the characters in the game, my friend's Jacob was playing. I can't think of the race. Tabaxian, that's it. Tabaxian cat. So we all know, when you can watch tons of YouTube videos on this, that that cats do not like pickles. So one of the players were like, at night when they were camping, decided to play a prank on the Tabaxian, was to put a pickle next to him so when he woke up he would get shocked and jump. And so I was just like, you know what, that's cute, it's funny, it's a little goofy prank amongst the group players. So I was like, you know what, I allowed it. So he put the pickle there, and Jacob's character woke up for the morning for his watch, saw the pickle, and I gave him a chance, a will save, a very low one, but just for the fun of it. And he didn't pass the will save. He wound up rolling a 1. So I made it so that he was fearful of pickles for the rest of the session. So they just kept torturing him with pickles constantly because he was a cat. But that's just, a cute little inventive story of things you can do inside your game to have fun. And everybody was laughing hysterical. And everyone had a good time. That's just basically what this is about. Just remember, the rules in the book are just guidelines. That's why they call it guide. Dungeon Master's Guide, Player's Guide. It's supposed to guide you through the game. Yeah, there are some hard rules that you have to stick to, of course. I'm not going to deny that. But chances are you can get around them with your DM as long as you sit and talk and everybody's in agreement. Who cares? But there are some hard, fast rules you can't get around. But, hey, you never know. People modify games all the time. That's how you get these various clones of games and how you get various new classes and spells and everything. Basically, to sum it up, make a ruling, sit down with your DM, chat it out. You as a DM, sit down with your players, go over the rules in session 0, and have fun. That's really what this is about. You rule the game, not the other way around. So don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and when you do subscribe, hit that little bell so when a new video comes out, you'll be the first to know, so you can subscribe, you can like and comment on the videos. Don't forget to leave a comment here and tell me what you think about the rule of cool and how you handle things in your game for making rulings. And do you not do it? Do you not understand it? Maybe you need some further information. Who knows? Just get back to me, and I'll see you next time, folks. Good night, everybody.